So again, still raising the same concern. We have a
Can we discuss it at that time?
$222.48. We can, just know then that I'd like to discuss that with the consent agenda.
Any other unfinished business? Consent agenda, do you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move on the consent agenda.
Do you have a motion? Do you have a second?
We do,
Do
Mr.
you
Chair.
have a second? Any discussion?
Yes, please. A couple things, I'll cover the Iverson bill in a moment. Just wanted to note that the December 3rd meeting minutes did not include anything about unfinished business, and it was under unfinished business right
Pardon?
now. The Iverson deal.
Okay.
So would you be willing to correct those and
I
bring
will.
them back?
I
Okay.
will.
So that would be one
So
recommendation that
We will remove those from the consent.
Correct. Okay. And then I noted in the warrants that the Condon bill for Iverson Roovers, a Condon bill for $222.48 is in our packet again today. We've talked about that for the last 3 or 4 meetings. And for the public who's here and doesn't understand what's going on, the board moved by resolution on August 27th to retain the legal services of the Iverson Roovers Condon law firm. However, when the bill came through dated October 16th, they had started charging us on August 26th already. So we pulled those charges for August 26th from the bill and paid the rest of it. The reason we pulled it, there is no resolution to match up for authorizing that those services be rendered. So we have $222.48 that was not authorized by this board as an expenditure. There's also some questions as to how a law firm was contacted prior to a resolution even being passed. It's not usual and customary and perhaps even legal practice for any commissioner here to just call up a law firm and say, hey, we want you to start doing law work on behalf of Wabasha County. We don't have that authority. It takes 3 of us to dance, so to speak. It takes a majority vote. When it comes to this $222.48 bill, I know that's not a huge amount of money, but we don't have a board vote to go ahead and start those services on August 26th. And so it raises a whole bunch of questions. How did this, whoever contacted this law firm, and I've asked several times and no one will answer that question, who directly picked up the phone, called the law firm and said, hey, we don't have a board resolution. The board hasn't even had a discussion about this yet in an open meeting where the public could hear and witness this. But yet we want you to go ahead and start doing legal services on behalf of Wabasha County. And so, no one will tell me who picked up the phone and actually started that relationship with this law firm. And also, how did this law firm mysteriously know or predict that the board was going to approve it? So it brings into question all kinds of things. How did this happen? The board has been given over the course of time several memos, if you will, from our own county attorney's office. One dated January 3rd, 2012, where the county attorney's office cautioned or warned the county board at that time not to enter into a legal agreement with a retainer, I guess, with an outside law firm. He cited the Minnesota Attorney General's office as echoing that. He also said to be careful that if you do enter a retainer, that it's limited in scope and what's going to happen. Unfortunately, the retainer that we are currently under does not have any of that in it either. There's also another, since we last talked about this, there's another letter dated June 7th, 2012 that I came across. And this was also from the Wabasha County Attorney, Jim Nordstrom. And he says, to my knowledge, and this was regarding when the 2012 board was looking into hiring the Eric Cardall law firm to do some outside work for us. And he said, "To my knowledge, no discussion has ever occurred in an open board meeting regarding the review and updating of the Wabasha County Policy Manual." That's what we were looking at having them doing. And he said, "When was this decision made?" The discussion has not occurred and no decision has been made in that regard in any previous open meeting. It is my duty as Wabasha County Attorney to advise the board of potential unauthorized conduct. That unauthorized conduct by the majority of the board will result in the expenditure of public tax dollars contrary to Minnesota law. As I've stated in writing and at open board meetings, my office stands ready to provide whatever assistance is necessary to the county board to carry out its duties and responsibilities. And so here we have kind of almost I guess what I would say a double standard in that, you know, back in 2012, we were cautioned not to do this. You know, he even raised the question as to whether it was legal for us to do so. He called it unauthorized and contrary to Minnesota law. And we, you know, that was a discussion we had in an open board meeting, and here we have a bill for $222.48 that there was no discussion ever in an open board meeting about this. So it's not transparency in government. It's not good for the taxpayers, even though, like I said, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's the principle. And if we're going to set that standard that any of us can pick up the phone as commissioners and start a legal relationship with an outside law firm, and then bring that invoice in and have the board backdate it and just put a rubber stamp on it, I think we're treading in the waters of malfeasance. I think we're treading into some unethical and illegal behavior, and I would caution the board not to do this. I've been a commissioner for 3 years, going on my 4th year. I have never signed a voucher. What a voucher is, it's kind of like an expense report or expense form authorizing to issue payment, actually authorizing Denise to issue payment to the vendor, which in this case is the law firm. Have any of you other commissioners ever signed a voucher? I mean, it's usually, correct me if I'm wrong, Denise or Deb, usually a department head or someone who orders the service will sign that and provide the documentation that the services were rendered. And that's, I kind of think, what you need, Denise, to pay the bill. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's our county policy and process and procedure. Usually, I mean, I've never heard where a commissioner has gone out and done that. I could be wrong. Can anybody provide?
You do it for your per diems and your mileage.
Right, those are our expense, our personal expense forms, but I have never signed one where it's on behalf of the taxpayer, you know, the whole board.
I can think of one. On October 25th of 2011, the board retained Eric Cardell to represent it. And in one of the bills that he submitted, he actually dated it on October 24th, which is very similar to the situation that we're in right now. So obviously, somebody must have contacted Mr. Cardell prior to that resolution being passed. And in fact, there was a line item on his bill. So it's not unique. Individuals contact attorneys quite frequently. In this case, I believe, Ms. Rushing, you were provided an email that was dated November 21st, which indicated that, I believe it was MCIT that contacted this law firm because they were informed us that they would not be able to provide that representation. So yes, they were contacted as a matter of course of their business. I believe that they expended those fees because they assumed that the board would approve that contract, just like I'm assuming Mr. Cardell did on that. Also in that resolution on the 25th, the retainer agreement that the board entered into authorized fees of up to $5,000. However, the actual legal fees were closer to $12,000 or $13,000. So I guess that was another time that the board, a resolution might have been violated, and understanding what your concerns are.
Actually, I would encourage you to review the DVD of that meeting. Eric Cardell did come down and he addressed the board, stating that he had overruns because of things happened throughout that process that were not anticipated. And so he had told the board that, you know, if the board didn't want to pay him, he'd actually have to eat that because it was, you know, his retainer was for $5,000.
And I believe the board chose to pay that, just like the board did choose to do in this case. And in this case, also on October 25th, the board passed a resolution, but there was action on October 24th under those attorney's fees. I believe those are the same complaints that you're having now that the former majority agreed to pay for then. So I'm not sure what the difference is in the two situations.
I was explaining the difference when you interrupted me. The difference is the board at that time took into consideration, well, number one, I'll back up. Mr. Cardo was retained in an open meeting by a board resolution where the public was witness to that happening. There were overruns on the bill because of maneuvering by county staff here, which increased the workload on the attorney, and so he had to put more effort into it than what he anticipated. He counseled the board that if they did not want to pay his overrun, that he would be happy to write it off, but these were services he rendered. The board at that time, in good faith, decided to pay for that legal bill because he did do the work, and he does not have a crystal ball so that he could anticipate the political posturing that was going to happen throughout that process. And so that's where that additional overrun came in. But my key point here is that was done by board resolution in an open board meeting where everyone was present and public had an opportunity for input, which they did. Now today, we're looking at a legal bill that does not have any board resolution to match with it. And it is contradictory to memos that come directly from your office that is not how the board is supposed to handle these types of outside retainers. And so my concern is that I know we have to go to a public hearing here, so I would like Mr. Chair to pick this up after the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay. We have to recess for let's see.